Hey everyone, new episode, new week. Thank you for downloading the Retro Gamers. Or if you subscribe, it should automatically be downloading. Hit that subscribe button. Larry here.
And Anthony here.
What's going on, Ant? In sunny California?
Yes, I am in sunny California, enjoying the beauty of Mother Nature that is my backyard.
Yeah, the last couple weeks, Anthony on Skype is Skyping from his backyard, so making me quite jealous because in this basement apartment I live in, I have no such thing as a backyard.
Yeah, no, I'm very surprised with the amount of light you get in there from that tiny little window behind
Honestly,
you.
this is the only window. The other window's in my bedroom, and that's constantly closed because that's level with the ground, and I don't need some cat peeing on me in the middle of the night.
Yeah, no, you're basically one step away from being a hobbit.
Really, please, I've been in basements since. I moved in my parents' basement, then I moved into the famous basement apartment we lived in.
The famous East 12th Street basement that we all lived in.
Me and Ant didn't live in it together, but there were segments of people. And then I'm here. So eventually I'll live above ground. So
I won't hold my breath.
One day. And joining us...
But you might have to.
I do, please. The amount of times it's been flooded down here, forget about it. And our guest this week, he's back. We're back with a crossover episode. And we have Josh from Victims and Villains. What's going on, Josh?
What's up? I'm not going to lie. I was waiting for that intro, but it was so hard not to jump into that conversation. So.
I saw you. I know when Anthony made a comment about hobbits, I saw Josh like, "Oh, I want to say something, but I don't want to ruin the flow."
I know, Josh. I make it too enticing. I know.
So what's happening, Josh? How you been?
Nothing too much. I'm actually that whole little shelving unit you got back there of toys. I actually am starting my own collection over to the left of our studio.
Sweet. Yep, I got the pop vinyls there. I got a couple DVDs, mostly pop vinyls. Some Amiibo.
Yeah, I don't have a toy collection per se, but I do have an ever-growing video game shelf.
There you go.
Hey, they are called action figures. So.
Yes, and with your retro gaming works just as better than the mess that I have by my television.
Yeah, actually, that's really cool. Unfortunately, I am already out of room.
Me too.
Yeah, when 12 systems very quickly grows to 14 to 16 to now 18 systems, it's kind of hard to find places for them all.
And Josh, hopefully your studio, the construction has just begun on where you can put all these figures and probably comics and anything that you're collecting.
Yeah, all these boxes back here are like comics, and then this top one right here, we have a project we're working on for live events. Got some Comic-Con posters. Got a Black Alpha poster from a review we did a couple weeks back.
Nice.
And then I got some whole bunch of other things over on the other end, but sound equipment. So yeah.
Yeah,
it sounds like we should do a separate episode just discussing our nerd dens.
Nerd cribs. Let's do it. Cribs.
Well, you would have the crypt since you're underground.
Well, CRIB.
Yes.
Oh, I heard crypt, and you know what? I like that better.
See, I'm sure the crypt keeper isn't down here somewhere. I don't know.
I bet if you look hard,
hiding in that AC unit.
Yeah,
I said he's probably hiding in that AC unit.
But, so, John, tell the retro gamers who may be unfamiliar with Victims and Villains, let us know a little bit about your show, great show, and the great message that you have behind it.
Cool. So we are a suicide prevention nerd news podcast, and we talk all about things as far as pop culture, whether it's film, comics. Try to put a little bit of spotlight on independent culture, whether it be film, movies, music, so on and so forth, and we do all that to kind of draw people in, but the heart of our show is to let people know about hope and that there is hope out there in many different formats. We all see things differently, but the end goal is to stop suicide, to let people know that those who are struggling with suicide, addiction, self-injury, or depression, that there is hope and that there is a way out of those states. So that's the reason why we exist, and we're actually getting ready to launch some pretty special projects here in June, so pretty excited about that. It's going to be expanding upon the whole suicide prevention aspect of what we do.
Awesome, good stuff, and great.
It's fantastic.
Yeah, honestly, and of course we'll put the links down below in the description. Down below, there's no down below in the description of the podcast. And
thanks, guys.
No problem.
Down below is where you dwell.
What? Yeah, it's true, very true, and we'll definitely get that message out there. So this week, and last time, Josh, we had you on the show, we started talking about the Video Game Hall of Fame, the 2017 Video Game Hall of Fame. Some timing issues. We couldn't get you on last week when we were talking about the Hall of Fame, but we still want your ideas, your opinions, because we first talked about this with you. 4 new games are in the Video Game Hall of Fame, and kind of get your thoughts, your ideas on it. And Ant, do you remember which 4 they were?
Let's see. We had Donkey Kong.
Yep.
Street Fighter 2, which was our retro spotlight last week also, since it was in the Hall of Fame. We had Pokemon Red and Green, and we had one more that's escaping me.
Halo
Combat Evolved. That was, that was the 4th one.
So let's get your thoughts. We'll kind of take it one game at a time here. Let's start with Halo. Josh, have you ever played Halo? Your thoughts on it entering into the Hall of Fame?
I played it when it first came out. I did not have an Xbox growing up, but I had a whole bunch of friends that did, and we would just kind of spend Friday nights playing it. But I still think it's too, even after listening to the latest episode last night from you guys, I still think it's too young to kind of get in. I know Anthony had kind of made the comment, well, it kind of launched and kind of really relaunched. I don't even remember if you said it was Microsoft or kind of the genre that was online gaming, I think is what you said.
And first-person shooters, right?
Yeah, first-person shooters, I think also. I mean, GoldenEye, I think on N64, I think most people point to as really starting that revolution before, because you had Doom and Wolfenstein on PC, but it wasn't really prevalent on console. So then you got GoldenEye on N64, I think, where everybody started taking notice, and then Halo comes out and blows it away. And Josh, just one thing I wanted to touch on that you mentioned when you were talking about, you said the term, you didn't have an Xbox growing up, and I just have to chuckle a little bit, because while you were growing up not having an Xbox, I was already in my own apartment buying an Xbox.
I was right behind Anthony in college, I think, when I got the first Xbox.
Because I'm old.
You and me both, Ant. Don't worry, Josh. He's going to do this, I think, through this episode when we're talking about the Hall of Fame.
Yeah, I'm just going to slowly sit here and pluck out my gray hairs as he keeps talking about Josh talks about his eternal youth.
I'm not eternal. Not yet, at least.
But all right. So I mean, but a Halo fan, and did you play a lot? Even whether you at a friend's house, anything like that? A lot of the online play and stuff with Halo.
No, we normally just played
local,
back and forth with each other. I'm still kind of shocked that we still have all the video game franchises that exist, that there is no movie for this thing yet.
There were talks about it.
Funny you should talk about that too, because I believe the license went to 20th Century Fox, because when I was working there several years ago, I happened to stumble across several binders that were Halo related.
Really?
Yeah. So you remember when they were producing Halo toys? I'm sorry, action figures. When they were producing Halo merchandise that you can buy in stores and whatnot. Mm-hmm. Yeah, that was compliments of Fox Consumer Products, because they had the license.
Really?
So yeah.
Wow.
Here's something I'm not sure. We almost got it, and Peter Jackson was signed on to produce it, and Neil Blomkamp had actually was the director, and instead of doing that, they scrapped the project, took the remains, the skeleton shape of it, and actually gave us District 9.
Oh.
So that is the reason why we have District 9, and still waiting
for which I'm very grateful.
Yes. I mean, District 9 is a very underappreciated, truly great sci-fi film. There's nothing else out there that's really been made like it since, and, of decent quality, I will say. But I still think that we still need a Halo movie. I think that that could break the video game curse. In my opinion.
I think we have an opportunity now, like, to get that. And I think the reason why Halo never wound up becoming a movie is because of what you just said, the video game curse. So many studios are afraid to go into that video game genre because they very rarely succeed.
True.
I think they go in very hesitantly because we're getting a Tomb Raider reboot next year. From MGM. We're getting a Mortal Kombat reboot here soon. Uncharted is supposed to be making its way to the big screen, and then there's supposed to be another one. So there's 4 technically, and I don't.
Double Dragon 2?
Now who's the boss?
Oh, I'd totally be down for that.
You never saw the Double Dragon movie?
No.
Oh, okay. Well, this is a crossover. This is part 1 of a 2-part crossover. The other half will happen on Victims and Villains, which drops on Friday. And I think we may have just gotten a topic to talk about on Friday.
All right, Josh, we're giving you homework. Double Dragon movie.
I got homework the last time we did a crossover with you guys.
Well, that's what happens when you're the youngest one on the show.
That's true.
So, all right, yeah. Hey, I'm hoping for. They got Halo Red and Blue always came out, with the shows and stuff. So hopefully we'll get a Halo movie, very very shortly.
Yeah.
Pokemon Red and Green going in, the OG Japanese, but I guess the Pokemon in general going in.
No surprise there, really. If this is my thoughts on it, is that if in 2016 when you reintroduce a new version of your game with a twist and can get people so addicted to it that people literally plummet to their deaths playing your game, you deserve to be in the Hall of Fame.
No, agreed on that. Pokemon Go was a phenomenon unto itself, and you're right. People were not paying attention. Like the first 3 days, Pokemon Go, like everyone was complaining about their feet, their legs, and their knees because none of these people ever went out walking, and they were going around walking all over the place. But some people weren't paying attention. You had people hit by cars. I think you're right. Someone I think did walk off a cliff.
So, Larry, when you say some people, are you talking about you?
No, I didn't play Pokemon Go.
Oh, okay.
I'm smarter than that. I'm staying home. But I did,
well, that's debatable.
But I did download.
Kidding.
When Pokemon Go, when they re-released the original Pokemon American Red, Blue, and Yellow for the 3DS. Digital, I downloaded, and that was the first time. That was February of last year. That was the first time I ever played a Pokemon game. I didn't play it originally. So,
originally.
Yeah, but Josh, talk about, to get back to what you were talking about. This phenomenon that the game made, and we touched on it last week as well. You ever play Pokemon game? You probably, and don't take and I don't mean any disrespect by this, but you're probably more into did you watch the TV shows and the movie and stuff like that?
I had it I was all Pokemon. The way that I am now with kind of nostalgia and like comics, that's the way I was in growing up in Pokemon. I had it got so bad for Pokemon craze where I lived in Baltimore that they banned Pokemon school, Pokemon cards from the school. And if you actually brought them in, you and got caught with them, you got suspended.
Wow.
Wait, suspended? Not even detention?
No, you got suspended.
Oh,
jeez.
And
what kind of military school were you in?
Public schools.
There you go.
Enough said.
And so I wanted to I had the collection, just been yep, let me do it. I think I still have a couple, but I got rid of most of them. I got out of it, and I started to get back into it a little bit this year.
Well, it's funny too because we're talking it's 2017 now. Pokemon Red and Green came out 21, 22 years ago
96?
at least, or was it? Yeah, somewhere around there. Yeah. My friend has a 6-year-old who now collects Pokemon cards because she's obsessed with the Pokemon Go game. She just loves looking at the characters. She doesn't know how to play it or anything like that. I'm like, but it just goes to show you, here we are, over 20 years later. I'm and I'm watching a kid, just obsess over Pokemon cards. It just shows the power of this whole franchise.
Yeah, I never would have when they first kind of introduced Pokemon, I was thinking about this actually listening to the episode that you guys did last week with talking about the McDonald's toys and the Sonic. I remember being like the first movie had just come out and Burger King had like they literally did 50 like toy versions of all like the first 50 Pokemon.
I think I remember that. Yeah.
And like we had neighbors that lived like right across the street from us that were literally going to Burger King every day to get these toys.
As I say, that's a lot of Burger King kids meals.
Yeah, and the thing about it is that like that I never would have thought growing up that would have been something that had longevity. Even Power Rangers, I never would have thought that some of the things that I grew up on would have had longevity, let alone Pokemon. I was surprised, honestly, that like given the digital age we live in, Digimon's not bigger.
Yeah, well, they're the Kmart Pokemon.
Yeah, I was just going to say, Digimon is like the GoBots to the Transformers. So,
yeah.
To which you're probably like, what are GoBots? I don't know what GoBots are. I wasn't born yet.
I really don't.
You honestly don't know what GoBots are?
I have no idea.
Oh my god! All right, one episode we may have to like just do like a retro
More homework for Josh.
Oh, the GoBots! Oh my god!
Double Dragon
the movie. GoBots.
We're just going to make a list as we go on. And Josh, I actually used to be an English teacher, so I'm allowed to give homework.
Okay. I'm pretty sure that once you walk away from that profession, you can't give homework out.
No, that is not what they told me. And if you keep it up, I'm gonna ask for a 10-page term paper.
Yeah, he's serious. It's tough when you have to email it to him.
Larry's had to write many a term paper for me.
I'd like to read the one on the Virtual Boy.
What? I can make a thesis out of that.
See that? Look, I didn't even have to get the dig in. Josh did it for me.
Everyone's getting the dig in. I'm going to wear a T-shirt going around saying,
yeah, see,
don't mention Virtual
Boy.
Larry
couldn't fill more than half a page on the Virtual Boy anyway, so I would never assign that to him.
Street Fighter 2 is the third of 4 that made their way into it.
Street Fighter 2 is one that I don't really remember playing all that much. I remember playing Capcom versus Marvel more.
Okay.
So like I'm like semi-familiar with the characters, but given the fact that you are again like Ant had said last week about it being kind of like just a copycat franchise, like you have to have real standout. Like there has to be something special about that franchise to make people want to say I want to copy this, and to kind of start off or even to revitalize a genre. And Anthony had mentioned last week about how this game was kind of getting people back into the arcades and wanting to kind of relive that nostalgia of what maybe like 5-6 years prior to that. And so I think that just really proves its staying power, is that if you can start out as a arcade game and still like within 4 years of release hit over $2 billion, like between consoles and arcades, I think that really says something alone.
And that was just in the 90s. I mean, we're talking the 90s, with inflation, that would have been like a $4 billion industry right now, which is insane.
And not only that, but because of the 90s, without the internet, without that massive like noise of, hey, you got to check out this game, there was really word of mouth if you happen to walk across, and you come across, I should say, a Street Fighter 2 game. I remember at the beach club out here, Breezy Point Surf Club, I used to go to, they had arcade games near the cafeteria, but like nothing spectacular. They had Asteroids, which by then, and we're talking early 90s, was all right. It's kind of made its way through. But as soon as they brought in Street Fighter 2, I mean, I remember just overnight the line waiting for kids to get on that arcade machine to play. It was a world of difference. And then they brought in later on, I think they replaced it, Street Fighter 2 with Darksiders. It's a fighting game, but like with
I remember that
like
one.
Vampires and Frankenstein's monster, stuff like that, and it didn't do as well. I mean, it did good, but we wanted Street Fighter 2.
Yep, and Street Fighter 2 was in the video store around the corner from me. That I eventually wound up working at several years later, but I do remember the popularity of Street Fighter there until they replaced it with Mortal Kombat.
There you go, which is another genre breaker. So
exactly, but and considering the fact that Mortal Kombat was also nominated for Video Game of the Year, it was actually interesting that Street Fighter 2 got selected, but also probably more deserving because without Street Fighter 2, we may not have gotten Mortal Kombat in the form that it was. Don't know. I mean, they could have been,
Sure.
at that time they may have already been developing it, but Street Fighter 2 beat them out the gate and, revolutionized the fighting genre.
Josh, Street Fighter 2 had so many spin-offs. I know last week I was calling them sequels, but they were like spin-offs. Yeah. Like have you played any of these? Whether there's Super Street Fighter 2, Street Fighter 2, they got Ultra Street Fighter 2 coming out soon for the Switch. But have you played any incarnation of Street Fighter 2, even the re-releases on Xbox or PS?
No, I have not. Like I said, I remember if I played it, it was probably vaguely for either the Genesis or the 64.
Fair enough.
If they came on one of those systems, but I grew up with Tekken and Mortal Kombat, so those are the two that which again you wouldn't have those without Street Fighter 2.
Correct.
And just kind of given the popularity, because that's pretty much what I have to say.
Yeah, I was gonna say it leaves you speechless. We get it. We understand you're getting emotional over it. It's it's a touching moment.
And finally, of the four, the one that we thought should have been in way beforehand, Donkey Kong.
Yes. So for this crossover on our episode, we are talking about the documentary King of Kong: A Fistful of Quarters that I got introduced to last time with these guys. And after watching that and going in even the first 25 minutes when they're talking about Donkey Kong and the construction of Donkey Kong and how the levels are set up, I would dare to say that Donkey Kong needs to do it. Needs to be on this list simply for the simplicity and its brilliance. I mean, this is an intelligent game that I didn't even really kind of think it was that intelligent until this. Not to mention the fact that you have another franchise that spun off of it and a terrible movie. But this thing has also spun off, a couple cartoons from it, probably a couple, I would imagine, even comics from it as well. Action figures. I mean, this is just a franchise that has been, again, starting out with something as simple as a donkey, or not a donkey, but a monkey ape throwing barrels at a plumber. That's such a simple concept, and yet it's one of the hardest games.
He was
simple and strange.
But remember, he wasn't a plumber; he was a carpenter.
That is true. He was originally a carpenter.
Oh.
But yeah, exactly. Mind blown. I mean, yeah, there's bits everywhere. And mark my words, and I really hope one day one of these podcasts where we're talking about Donkey Kong makes its way to somebody who works at Nintendo. One day, Stanley and Pauline will come out of retirement and get revenge. They will get out of their trailer park.
Yep.
And they will come out and get revenge. I swear. That'd be a great horror movie. So Josh, if you don't remember, Stanley is actually Mario and Luigi's cousin. He was in Donkey Kong 3. And he kind of got forgotten after that game came out because he basically had an atomizer and was shooting puffs of smoke up Donkey Kong's butt.
Okay, so this is my question: is how old is Donkey Kong 3? What year did it come out?
That came out, I believe, somewhere around 86 or 87.
Most likely.
Ish.
Yeah, definitely wasn't the 90s.
So 87, 5 years. It'll be, 35 years old?
I'm not good at math.
Okay, so
actually, my apologies. The initial release date was 1983, so it is 34 years old.
Wow, Donkey Kong 3 is that old?
Next year, Nintendo needs to do a 35th anniversary and call it Stanley's Revenge.
That would be awesome.
Yeah, it was originally released in arcade Halloween 1983. See, it's all set up for a horror movie. You just need to come. It's a Halloween horror movie on its 35th anniversary. Stanley gets revenge.
Telling you, you're in Hollywood. Make it happen.
Except
yes, I will put the pitch together. I'm giving myself homework now. I'm going to put a pitch together for Nintendo.
What were you saying, Josh?
Blow fire up there.
There you go. It was such a weird concept for Donkey Kong 3. Basically, like, Stanley worked in... where did he work? Because Donkey Kong would come down, shake hornets' nests. The hornets would come down.
I believe it was a greenhouse.
Yeah, and that's what it was. And you had to shoot Donkey Kong back up so he would stop shaking the wasp nest.
My question is, why did Donkey Kong feel it necessary to go into a greenhouse? I mean, really? Like
how could Donkey Kong fit into a greenhouse?
That was the other thing. I think it was. Wait, let's see. Yeah. Stanley is a bug man. Donkey Kong has taken refuge in a greenhouse.
Because he got tired of falling off construction sites and being kidnapped.
And you also have to stop. Basically, you have to stop him from destroying all the flowers in the greenhouse. See, like, even by the time you got to there, they didn't even want to bring back Pauline. They were just like, yeah, whatever. We'll replace that word flowers.
To get back with Donkey Kong himself, I think another reason why it deserves to be in the Hall of Fame, not only like what you were saying, Josh, kind of the simplicity of the game and just what spawned from this mecha arcade cabinet, Donkey Kong himself became a star later on. Donkey Kong Country games, he's in Mario Kart games and stuff like that. So he's definitely made his mark himself.
Super Smash Brothers as well.
Yeah, so this would be the question I got to you guys. Do you feel that Mario is now a little bit more iconic than Donkey Kong is?
Oh, totally.
Absolutely.
Yeah. With the amount of games that Mario's been in, not even his own games, but I think he's, between his own games and cameos, I think he's been over like 250 games. Maybe 200 games, Mario has.
Holy dang.
He's been in a lot,
Mario is by far the franchise, the Nintendo, like, franchise spokesperson. I don't think you don't get bigger than Mario.
No. So with that, and that's 2017. Now, with the Hall of Fame, Video Game Hall of Fame 2018, you can actually submit through the Video Game Hall of Fame website candidates that you feel may be worthwhile to make it into 2018's Hall of Fame. Josh, let me ask you: do you have any games in mind you think is deserving to maybe make it in next year?
Let me ask you this.
All right.
Is it possible for you to read me all the games that are currently in there?
You know what? Why not? I happen to have the website up. So
I'm like, I don't want to say something that's already in there.
No, you're right, because I was going to, and it's already there. So here's what's...
But why? That allows me the opportunity to make fun of you.
16.
Don't deprive me of said privilege.
I'm prepped. I prepped. So here's what's in there. 16 games are currently in the in the Video Game Hall of Fame, and there you go. Donkey Kong, Doom, Grand Theft Auto 3, Halo Combat Evolved, The Legend of Zelda, The Oregon Trail, Pac-Man,
nice.
Pokemon Red and Green, Pong, The Simpsons, Sonic the Hedgehog. This is one I thought I was going to say, but it's already in there. Space Invaders, Street Fighter 2, Super Mario Brothers, Tetris, and World of Warcraft.
I would probably say first game that comes to mind would be two of the nominees from this year would be just lost it. Three of them. Okay. 3 of them. Got it. First off, I think that Myst would probably be a good candidate for it. Resident Evil and Tomb Raider. Just because of what they've done for their respective genres and moving, forward. Next, I would probably say Kirby. I think is also kind of a shock. To
Kirby, yes,
yep, on my list.
In there.
Yep.
So I mean, those are probably and maybe even the Sims. I think was kind of the
Sims is already in there. Yeah.
Sims. Sorry.
No, it's okay.
See, Josh, even when we list them out for you, man.
And those are all really good games, Josh, that you talked about. Even with Kirby. Kirby's on my list. And remember, there's 4 criteria, and all the games you mentioned hit all these criteria. Icon status, longevity, geographical reach, and influence. And these games that you mentioned definitely had all of those. Ant, any games that you can think of maybe that deserves to be in there? Maybe ones that haven't been nominated yet?
Well, first one off the top of my head, without question, is Galactic Pinball from the Virtual Boy.
Oh darn! I was gonna say Waterworld.
Ah, man. See, at least we're on the same page here.
How dare you?
Well, it just happens, doesn't it? I've got to. Well, thinking about it now, and I'm going through the list, of course, just to make sure that it's not in there. But the first game that popped in my head was Asteroids.
Yes.
Very
nice.
Asteroids, by far and away, was probably one of the most addicting games I remember playing, because I remember my entire family fighting over that game on the Atari when we used to have it. It was like, my dad would come home from work and immediately everybody step away. I go, it's Dad's turn to play. Yeah. So I feel like Asteroids is definitely a game that deserves it. Also, Adventure, which people credit for being kind of like that first action adventure, almost a little RPG-ish, but more, the actual first action adventure game for a console.
Going all the way back to Atari, so yeah.
Yeah, I mean, not to go back to back on Atari games, but also Adventure is also famously known for having the very first Easter egg in video games.
Yep, the programmer's name is in the game somewhere. Yeah,
if you do a certain set of criteria, you unlock a hidden room where the creator of the game listed his name, because back then they didn't get credits in video games, so he hid his name in the game.
That's awesome.
So those are 2 right off the top of my head that I think definitely deserve nomination and inclusion.
Very good list. With my list, Kirby, Josh, you nailed that one on the head. Kirby, definitely. Metroid.
Yes.
I mean,
yes.
The amount of games, the gameplay that Metroid presented with that open world, basically. And this, I don't know. Turtles, TMNT. I mean, that original game on the NES.
The first one?
The Turtles game on the NES, yeah. Really started this series of games. I know a couple of them, and they're arcade. Like the Turtles in Time game is a phenomenal game, both in the arcade and on the Super Nintendo. The original Turtles arcade game was a 4-player juggernaut in the arcade.
Okay. I think you're talking about the second Turtles game, though, not the first one.
No. I'm talking like, I say put the first Turtles game in, but what that did, like longevity and it's like, I'm kind of almost basing it on the criteria, geographical reach, and the fact that Turtles was already a brand that was brought into this video game world, and for it to be so successful, even just as a brand, I think that would probably find its way in.
I can understand that, but I don't. I have a feeling if any of them would get in, it would be the second one, because I feel like the first one, gameplay-wise, wasn't very well received.
Mm-hmm.
But I think the reason why the Turtles have become such a successful franchise is because of the second game, which was the arcade game that eventually was ported over to console. So I agree with you. Turtles should probably make its way in there eventually, but I think it'll be more for the second one, which started that style of gameplay.
And finally, I think Dr. Mario should be in there. That type of gameplay.
Ooh.
It took a lot from Tetris with the idea of a dropping piece, but then how you had to line up the pieces. You only had 2 colors at a time, getting rid of all the viruses. I think Dr. Mario definitely deserves to be in there as well. And Golden Axe actually just popped in my head. A game like we're always talking about Nintendo. Golden Axe on Genesis, on Sega, was I think kind of a like that beat 'em up game changer as well. Different characters, the storyline, the graphics.
I can definitely see. Well, I don't know. I mean, the thing with Golden Axe is that there are a lot of similar games to it. The question is, was it as monumental as, was it monumental enough that it set itself above everybody else? And I'm not sure about that. I mean, I love that game. Don't get me wrong. I absolutely love that game. So you could be right. Just not sure.
Fair enough. Josh,
So
And then
what
Josh, anything from the 2000s when you were, slowly closing your way into adulthood?
Probably Roller Coaster Tycoon. I
yes.
think.
Okay.
Yes.
Yep.
Love that game.
Another
Agreed.
game. That I could that's just kind of coming off of my head right now. Grand Theft Auto 3 is already in there.
Mhm.
This is another one I played a lot growing up. Halo is already in there. But my question for you guys would be, all right, so what are the rules of criteria again? It's icon status, longevity.
Icon status, longevity, geographical reach. The game meets the above criteria across international boundaries.
Okay.
And influence. And I'm reading this right from the World Video Game Hall of Fame.org website. Influence. The game has exerted significant influence on the design and development of other games, on other forms of entertainment, or on popular culture and society in general. A game may be inducted on the basis of this criterion without necessarily having met all the first three. So a game could go in just on strictly influence.
So, because I was going to say, I know that there are, there's two games that I can think of right off the top of my head that are not good, but they're so bad that they now have kind of gained infamy.
Okay.
Would you guys ever want to see, would you guys ever think that something like that would be possible to enter into?
Maybe the Video Game Hall of Shame.
It depends on the game. Do you have games in mind?
E.T.
Okay.
And
Oh, yeah, no.
Superman 64.
Ooh,
No.
I'm going to say
Ooh.
no to Superman 60. I mean, that's got a special place in, craptastic.
Yeah.
But-
Those are two surefire retro rejects right there.
I'll put my bid in for E.T. I would say
too.
E.T. has this cultural phenomena, especially with, a million of them being buried in the New Mexico desert.
Well, here's the very simple reason why I don't think that'll wind up in the Hall of Fame. It almost killed the entire video game industry. I don't think you want a game like that put in the Hall of Fame that has that distinction. Why is this one so popular? Well, it almost killed the whole industry.
But
it has since it has since been it's gained almost a cult following behind it now, and I don't know, there are certain films out there that I would never say are good, but because they have a cult status behind it, they kind of are considered good by cultural standpoints.
Well, no, you have a point there. I will argue that I doubt that will ever wind up in there. Maybe in a special wing, for stuff like that.
Right?
You've got the Virtual Boy wing, and you put ET in there, and they could all hang out together and cry over how they destroyed things.
I don't know. I can see E.T. Superman 64, no. I think people are trying to throw those away as quickly as possible. But I wouldn't be shocked if E.T. made it in. So.
And another game that I would I'm not saying now, but I'm saying years, maybe 10, 15 years. I think that another good game that's of recent memory that kind of really went back to making comic book video games good would be either Batman Arkham Asylum or Arkham City. I think that those things were game changers for Batman.
I could see Arkham Asylum down the line getting in there for the reasons you just said. I mean, absolutely amazing and totally revitalized not only that franchise but those type of games. Yeah, superhero games for sure.
Totally agreed on that. So that's our thoughts on candidates. If you have ideas on candidates for the 2018 World Video Game Hall of Fame, go to the website and put it in. But let us know on the Retro Gamers Facebook page. Give us your thoughts, your ideas on what you think belongs in the Hall of Fame.
Virtual Boy nominees not allowed.
I actually,
yeah.
While we're on the Virtual Boy, I want to get your guys' opinion on this real fast.
It sucks.
Dare you?
I was listening to this podcast the other day, and they were talking about the Virtual Boy. And there's two things that I want to ask. Is it true that the Virtual Boy had a warning that popped up right before you could not play it more than 20 minutes because it would cause permanent eye damage.
You shouldn't play for more than 15 minutes, I think it was. And not only that, it had an auto pause feature. So after 15 minutes, it would automatically pause the game for you so you can back up and absorb normal light back into your retinas.
And people wonder why this system wasn't successful.
So yes, it did have an auto pause feature, and that warning was at the beginning of every game that turned on. I don't even think it had to have a game in it. I think just boot up the system, and it had the warning. So that is true.
And my second question would be, the guys were talking about kind of how like the Virtual Boy back in those days was trying to get virtual reality and didn't really get it, but they were kind of talking about where virtual reality could be in 5 to 10 years, and I want to get your guys' opinions on this. Do you think that virtual reality, if it's done correctly, like you're all immersive, that it could bring back the age of the arcade?
Yes. I'm going to say right off the bat, yes.
Yeah, I think so too. I mean, virtual reality now is making such they're starting to slowly spread out where it's like now you can ride roller coasters with VR headsets on, which I find very strange. But I think VR is starting to really permeate, and I really do think like the next wave of arcades that could be super successful will involve two people standing there with headsets on, trying to beat the crap out of each other.
Well, the way that they were describing it is you would pretty much, it would be like almost like a photo booth. Like you'd have it up against the wall, and then you'd put your quarter in outside, and you would close the door behind you, and it would almost be like, I think the best way I could describe it would be something like, if you guys know X-Men, it would be like the Danger Room, stepping into that. And because the way that virtual reality is now is that, yes, you can have like a headset, and it's pretty much like an up-to-date version of the Virtual Boy. And then you have the Kinect as well, or the Wii, but they're kind of not really together. So the way that they were kind of making it sound would be like you'd walk into a room, put your quarter outside, and it would submerge you in this world of the video game.
I'm yes, it all, if I may, on a truce on the Virtual Boy for just a moment.
No such thing.
If they didn't call it the Virtual Boy, like if they would have called it like the 3D Boy or something, because the Virtual Boy really wasn't virtual. Like, it was stationary, and the games were more 3D. The 3D aspect of it, all joking aside, was amazing for the time. If you were able to see it. Yes.
If you were able to see it.
But that's even to today.
I could not see it at all.
10% of the population cannot see 3D. Even if you go to a 3D movie, and Anthony's one of them, he cannot see 3D. So,
well, no, I can't see 3D in the theater. I just cannot see 3D on a
Well, maybe
Virtual
on that
Boy.
Because of the red. And that's probably why, because of the single color. But it wasn't really virtual reality. None of the games were really like that, except for maybe I think the boxing game. But to get on your point, Josh, now the PlayStation VR, the Oculus Rift, well, that fell apart. The Google VR, legit virtual reality where you put the headset on, you have a couple controllers, and you just turn. You don't really walk. You turn. It's already here. And I think that's going to be the next evolution. They tried doing 3D. That didn't work out, even with televisions. But I think the virtual reality is going to take off. And as far as arcades, I remember the very first VR game I played was Virtual Reality Pac-Man.
Oh, yeah, I remember you telling me about this.
You were Pac-Man. You were in the maze, and the walls were as high. You couldn't see over the top of the walls because it looked like you were in like Tron almost. And you're just walking around, you turn a corner, and wham, there's a ghost right in your face. And it was freaky. And this was like the early 2000s. So I think now moving forward, VR is going to, even cardboard. I have a cardboard virtual headset that I just stick the iPhone in. I got it free from The Simpsons. And, even that, just that virtual reality, yes. So bottom line, yes. Because otherwise I'm going to ramble.
Okay, you're going to ramble?
Yeah. So I already was.
Too little, too late. Virtual Boy sucks.
So, yeah, VR will be the way to go. But Virtual Boy was part of it was a handheld. Technically, it was a handheld system. And, Josh, we were talking a couple days ago. You were reading, a comic book, and you saw an advertisement for Game Gear?
Yes, I remember like vaguely hearing it, but I
Vaguely.
didn't like actually know what it was.
Okay.
So
So
that's why I went
That,
to you
that was
guys.
Larry's attempt at a segue, by the way.
It's getting better, getting
Well,
better.
No, that was absolutely terrible.
Don't worry. Pretty soon, I'm going to solve the problem altogether. But,
No, no, don't take this away from me. I love your horrible segues.
the the Game Gear was, I guess, it's going to be a new segment on what we're going to teach Josh, because he's unaware of the
We're gonna call it Josh Learns.
Yes.
The Game Gear was Sega's answer to Nintendo's Game Boy. Bottom line, it was a handheld system. It was in color, which is different than the Virtual Boy, which was not even in black and white. It was in shades of green.
Was it Shades of Green? No.
It was never
No,
pure. No, it wasn't pure black and white. It was shades of green. The original Game Boy.
Oh no, you are right. You are right. I'm sorry. I thought you were saying the Game Gear. I'm like, no, Game Gear was full color.
Yeah, the Game Boy. Yeah, Game Gear was full color. Was Game Gear backlit? I don't remember if it was backlit. I don't think it was backlit.
I'm not sure if it was backlit. No.
But it was still
I don't think it was.
full color. And it kind of tried to recreate the graphics of almost. They tried to do like the Genesis. Some of the games looked good, but they still looked handheld. But they looked better graphically than the Game Boy.
Yeah, and you were also able to. There was also an attachment, I think, that you were able to like either play it on your Genesis or put it on your TV.
No, you can get the TV on the Game Gear. So back in the day, Josh, we used to have portable televisions with a very long antenna on top of it.
I remember that.
That you can
I
bring
took them all the time when I went camping.
Exactly. So you had that type of attachment to turn the Game Gear itself into a portable television. And that's like the reason. I remember that's the reason why I bought it. And I never got the attachment, unfortunately. It was way too expensive.
Yeah, and I remember getting it later down the line because if you don't know this, Josh, already, I've said this before on multiple occasions on the podcast that I was never a fan of handheld because I couldn't handle the fact that the screen was so small. I don't know what it was. It was just very uncomfortable on my eyes, or I just couldn't fathom playing on screens that small. Of course, now we all have phones and we do it. But back then I couldn't. I didn't have a Game Boy, didn't have a Game Gear, and then eventually one day, I went to a store called Funko Land, and
yes.
Funko Land was a series of stores basically that would buy, sell, and trade used games. So basically, what GameStop does now. And I saw that they had 2 X-Men games on the Game Gear I had never played, and I was a huge X-Men fan. So I bought the Game Gear specifically so I could play the 2 X-Men games that were on it. And I actually was really surprised with how much I enjoyed the Game Gear for the short period of time that I did have one.
Yeah, I'm seeing it now. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
No.
I Googled it because I wanted to see what comes first, because the way that you're describing the Game Gear is it almost sounds like a Game Boy Color, but Game Boy Color wasn't out till like 97, 98, according to Google. And the Game Gear is actually 91. In America is 90 in Japan. But I'm actually looking at this right now. Like, they still sell them. And
Gears?
Yes.
Wouldn't be surprised if they still sell them in Japan.
They're let me know next time you go to Japan.
Sounds like you giving me homework, young man.
Hey, I mean, if Larry's allowed to give you a list, I feel like we're friends now that I could ask for stuff like that.
He's my video game mule. All right, he's dragging these things.
You know what? Look, I'm just gonna put my hand up and cover Larry on my screen, and I'm gonna tell you, Josh, absolutely. You send me any list you want, I will happily go and get it for you. Larry, you're out.
But real quick side note. Speaking of importing games, did you see the whole the crackdown that they had? Some guy was importing old like Famicom, old Nintendo games and stuff, but he was smuggling in like spiders, like I guess to sell. Yeah, like exotic spiders to sell, but he popped them in the middle of Nintendo cartridges. Which I refuse to watch because my arachnophobia is off the roof. But there's a video you watching like the police open up the contraband, pop open these cartridges, and all these spiders are coming out.
Oh my
Oh,
God,
man.
what a waste of Nintendo cartridges. This is terrible.
But
It is.
I'm gonna leave.
Can I get the cartridges?
I'm gonna leave that topic.
Do they still work?
I don't know. I don't know if they were purely gutted or whatnot. But yeah, no.
Such a shame.
The Game Gear, the way it was held, it was sideways as opposed to that vertical feel of the Game Boy, with it being in color. Some great games for it. Shining in the Darkness. Not Shining in the Darkness.
Which
it was a
was
Shining Force game.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, Shining in the Darkness. Yeah.
No. Shining in the Darkness was the first-person. It was a first-person style labyrinth game that was the prequel to Shining Force, which is one of my favorite RPGs of all time.
And then they did release a Shining Force on the Game Gear that we're traditional with, the top-down version. Batman Returns, I remember I had for it. I had the Sonic games. They weren't ports. They were all new Sonic games on the Game Gear. Some of the best out there. And in fact, if anyone owns a 3DS or a Nintendo DS, on the Virtual Console, on the Nintendo eShop, you can download Game Gear games on the 3DS. In fact, I have the Shining Force game downloaded on the 3DS.
Very nice. How are you doing in it? About as good as Castlevania 2?
Well, I'm not broadcasting it. Yeah.
I mean, he's probably still playing that one.
What? Yeah, right.
I have a feeling he'll be playing that one until the end of time.
So, and then, other, TurboGrafx came out with the TurboGrafx Express. So, the Lynx, Lynx came out later.
Well, it's funny you should keep bringing up all these different handheld systems, Larry, because I decided, since I knew we were going to be talking about handhelds, because Josh had questions about the Game Gear, that I decided to do a retro spotlight this week on a handheld system.
Hey, well, on a host, this is our first spotlight on the system.
Handheld console.
There you go, Josh. Look at this. You're making waves and you're causing new things to happen.
Josh, no, I have to say thank you. You're helping us break ground, which is really awesome.
Here we go on the retro spotlight on the.
Here we go
on the Virtual Boy.
What? I can tell you dollars and donuts that it's not going to be the Virtual Boy.
No. We're talking handheld systems here, so it will sadly not be the Virtual Boy. Trust me, there will be, like we said earlier, there will be a whole special episode devoted just to the Virtual Boy. You will be more than welcome to guest on that one.
Yes.
I know you want to. But for today, our retro spotlight is going to be on something a little bit different. So my question to you gentlemen is, without looking it up on Google, what because Google has all the answers, of course, but what in your mind is the first handheld system ever created?
Oh, I got this one. I'm going to give Josh a shot at it. Well, I don't know it, but I have an idea.
Josh, first handheld console.
So I'm the first thing
what
that
the
I
hell
can
was
think
that?
of.
Don't help me, Larry.
First thing I can think of would be the original. Would be the original Game Boy, but I know that's wrong because there was something that was in the early '80s, and I want to say it probably has something to do with Atari.
Okay,
I'm gonna Game and Watch.
You are both absolutely incorrect.
Ooh, there was something before the Game and Watch. All right.
Yeah, well, let me clarify also. We're talking about a handheld console.
Oh,
Game and Watch were single-player games.
Yeah,
Consoles have cartridges. So, so I decided to do a retro spotlight on the very first handheld gaming console that had cartridges. And much to my surprise, I actually discovered it was something I wasn't aware of either. So the retro spotlight for this week is on a system called the Microvision, which was the very first handheld video game console that had cartridges.
Okay, let's do this.
Sounds
all right, so
super familiar.
Yeah, I know,
so
right? The name sounds very familiar.
Everybody listening, Larry, Josh, I want you to take your seats. Class is in session. Teacher's back on.
Oh, man.
Yep. And there will be a 5-page essay required after I'm done. So,
Larry, do mine.
Yeah, you do not want me to do yours now.
Josh, you want to fail? Anyway, so the Microvision was actually developed by Milton Bradley. So, and if you don't know Milton Bradley
Did
is...
he play on the Royals?
Yes, he did. The Milton Bradley Company is more famously known for board games. So they've released many a board game, but they decided in the 70s to get involved in the that is it. So they decided to get involved in the gaming world, and they thought a good idea would be to do a gaming console that could play multiple games. So they came up with the Microvision. It was released in November 1979. So we're going back to the 70s. And it was discontinued a couple of years later in 1981. So it was designed by Jay Smith. If you don't know who Jay Smith is, he was the engineer who later designed the Vectrex gaming console, which is another retro gaming console that we've brought up several times here on the podcast. And the whole idea behind it, again, first handheld system. So the combination of the portability and the cartridge system actually was very successful for them at the time. Smith Engineering, named after Jay Smith, of course, wound up grossing about $15 million in the first year that the system came out, which now we're talking 1979, 1980. That's pretty damn good.
Yeah.
And actually, that according to the former head of research and development for Smith Engineering, he stated that the Microvision was the reason why Nintendo came out with the Game & Watch ultimately, because they designed the Game & Watch based off of the limitations of the Microvision. Because despite the Microvision success, it had a lot of problems. So the units and cartridges for the Microvision are actually really, really rare. It only came out with 12 cartridges throughout its 2-year run, basically. It needed 2 9-volt batteries to operate originally.
Nice.
2 9-volt batteries. So if you remember the 9 volts. And but it was due to the processor that they had, or the processor and the cartridges that they had. They eventually were able to make it work with 1 9-volt battery, but because of the design of the system, it still had that second hole for the second 9-volt.
They couldn't redesign the.
They didn't redesign it. Instead, what they named it as is they named it as a spare 9-volt battery holder. so you can keep it in there.
Genius.
And unfortunately for the Microvision, a lot of them now, if you have one or if you can find one, they're probably pretty damaged if playable, and possibly unplayable, because they had a lot of little problems. And one of the most well-known problems for the Microvision was something called screen rot.
Ooh, that don't sound good at all. Sounds like you need an ointment for that or something.
Yeah, so basically what happened was there was very poor sealing and impurities during manufacturing on the screens. So what would happen is the liquid crystal in the screens would spontaneously leak and cause the screen to darken. So you would be able to play the games, but you could barely see what you were doing.
Oh my gosh, terrible.
Yes. So there was another issue with the system that involved static electricity. So
this thing's dangerous to hold. A 2 9-volt if you're not licking the batteries, you're going to get electrocuted by just playing the system.
Yes, exactly. So, learning about this makes me really want one now. So, basically, if you were playing the system and you had removed the protective sliding door that covered the pins up in the system,
as you do,
the processor could be fried by any type of electrical charge, including static electricity from your own body that you don't even feel. So basically, if you had the cover open and you were holding the console with the cover open, you could essentially fry the system without knowing it.
And
so, did this thing not go through test markets? Are they just like, all right, well, we're gonna beat everyone to the system, send it out?
It's the late 70s, probably not.
I was just going to say, probably no. Probably they did not test it, or when they were testing it, these things just did not happen to come up.
Well, think about it, because everyone had a shag carpet back in the 70s, but I'm sure it wasn't in the R&D department when they were making this thing.
Exactly. They're like, oh, what kind of problem could this be? We have linoleum floor. We would never think of these things. And then also on the Microvision unit, the keypad was what you played with. It had like a 12-button keypad, kind of similar. The ColecoVision had the 12-button keypad. So it had that, and they would have issues with that too, because as you would press it, the the cover would expand, and then you would have issues pressing the right buttons, or the buttons wouldn't work properly. So there were all
Holy
kinds
cow.
of problems with this system. But again, we're talking about the very first ever handheld system to ever be released. So there are always going to be, issues that come out with it. Technical specs on the Microvision, and these are all, I love reading the tech specs because it's amazing to understand how little it took to run a gaming system or a video game back then.
Honestly, right?
So the screen itself had a resolution of 16 whole pixels.
Oh, all right. Now we're playing with power.
Yes. Its processor speed was 100 kilohertz. not even megahertz or gigahertz. We're talking about 100 kilohertz.
Wow.
You can't get smaller than that much smaller. It had 64 bytes of RAM.
Wow. Not even
Not even a kilobyte of RAM. 64 bytes of RAM.
Good God.
It's so.
I feel like the human body can produce more bytes of RAM and more hertz of power. Yeah.
Well, apparently, we had more electricity than it too. So, it had a 12-button keypad and a paddle.
Okay.
One of those little paddles that you played with. Okay, and there are a couple of things to note about the system, which is why I thought doing a retro spotlight on it was important. It was released with over the course of 2 years. It had 12 games on the system. Its launch titles, when it first released in '79, were 4 games. One was called Blockbuster, which was basically a clone of Breakout or Super Breakout, if you know that game, from the Atari. Bowling, Pinball, and Connect 4.
Okay.
Now, 4 would make sense because Milton Bradley produced that board game.
Yeah.
And then the other games that came out with it, just to run down them quickly, and not in any particular order of year because I'm saving 2 of them specifically. Mindbuster, Vegas Slots, Baseball, Sea Duel, Alien Raiders, Super Blockbuster, which was only released in Europe in 1982 because by that point it had already been discontinued in the United States. But Europe had it for a whole extra year, those lucky guys. And then the 2 games I wanted to focus on from this system, Star Trek Phaser Strike was released in 1979. It was the first home console video release for the Star Trek franchise.
Okay.
And they had gotten the license for it because they had just released the very first Star Trek motion picture. So for the very Star Trek, the motion picture had a video game on the Microvision called Star Trek Phaser Strike. Now, a year later, they lost the license to that, so they re-released the game as just Phaser Strike. Over in Europe, they had changed the name completely to Shooting Star. In most countries, in France, for some odd reason, they got their own name called Cannon Phaser because they're French. I don't know. No offense to anybody I know who is French, but you got your own name on the game. And then the most important game, though, to be released on the Microvision was a game called Cosmic Hunter in 1981. And it's not specifically for the game itself, but Cosmic Hunter introduced the concept of the directional pad on a handheld gaming device. So the crosshair that you see on video games, the very first concept to ever be used in a video gaming console was actually on the Microvision in 1981, and it was done on the screen.
Oh, wow.
Nice.
So I'm sure it was very unwieldy to use, but thanks to the Microvision, we have the concept of the standard D-pad that we're all used to seeing on pretty much every handheld, every gaming system controller that you know of. So, and then my personal favorite, just to close off on the Microvision, the Microvision was featured in one movie, and that movie was Friday the 13th Part 2. If you're not a fan of horror movies, in Friday the 13th Part 2, one of the characters is a guy in a wheelchair, and there's one scene in the movie where he's sitting in the wheelchair playing a handheld game with a girl next to him, and that's the system that they're playing. They are playing a Microvision.
When did that movie come out?
1981, I believe.
Oh, okay. All right.
So 81 or 82. So, and just a couple of other things while I was doing my research on the Microvision. I happened to find an ad in the Sears catalog from 1979 or 1980 for the Microvision. It retailed for a grand total of $39.97.
Wow. That was probably expensive back then, but nowadays it's pretty cheap.
Games that were available for purchase came to a whopping $15.97.
Oh, I only wish.
So, and I just sent you guys that image, so to look at.
Sears catalog. Holy cow.
Yeah, Sears, good old Sears catalog.
Josh, you remember the Sears catalog?
Yeah, I do. This system reminds me of those like little pre-made video games that they came out. I guess like I don't know if they were in the 80s, but I know they were in the 90s. The ones that Tiger would produce.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, the little single player handheld systems. Yeah.
Yeah.
And those go all the way back to the 70s, the late 70s, like when single handheld games were coming out. But this was the first company to actually attempt creating
interchangeable
handheld
cartridges.
console. Yeah, where the cartridges could change, because those little handhelds would only play the one game that was installed in it.
And they were awesome.
So that is this week's Retro Spotlight, the Microvision, the first handheld video game console in the history of video games.
Thank you, Milton Bradley. There you go. Good.
Thank you, Milton Bradley.
Stuff.
Thank you for your failure.
Fantastic. All right, cool. So we're going to start to wrap things up. Well, we're not going to wrap things up. We're going to temporarily put things on hold because we're going to continue Friday on Victims and Villains with our crossover episode. But, of course, we can't end any Retro Gamers episode without This Week in Gaming. So Anthony's going to continue to carry the load here and see what happened this week. This week in gaming. And
that was a lot on the Microvision. what do you want from me? Jeez.
Yeah, didn't you get that memo that you're supposed to do Retro Spot this week in gaming this week?
No, Larry just shows up.
I only edit the show.
Larry shows up and edits the show. I got to carry the weight here, Josh. You know, it's such a burden on me. I'm also 3 hours earlier here that I have to deal with this.
I have multiple shows I got to deal with. The Pro Slam World podcast featuring Larry Mormon drops every Friday. Check it out.
Oh, cheap plug.
Yeah,
Thank you very much.
When he's not playing with his action figures, he's doing the Pro Slam.
Which probably involves action figures as well.
Yeah, it is also playing with action figures.
I got two of them. Look, I got two of them. There's a giant Hulk Hogan right there, and an old school 80s Hulk Hogan right there. That's the one I used to play with all the time. 7 wrestling rings I went through. Good gosh.
Oh wow.
Well, that's
okay.
Another show.
Let's kill that jaunt down memory lane and move into This Week in Gaming. So feel free to jump in whenever you hear something that sounds interesting to you guys. But This Week in Gaming, we're going to start back in good old 1982, before Josh was even a thought.
Yes.
And released on DOS, the good old DOS operating system, was Othello. Do you remember the game Othello?
I love Othello. It's such a basic game.
Yeah, Othello, the board game. Josh, anything? You look like you're completely lost.
I mean, I've probably seen it if I saw a picture of it.
It's basically it's like a tile game. I guess you have a bunch of tiles, black tiles, white tiles, and what you do is you have to get the most colored tiles of your color on the board. But when you like say you have like 5 white tiles, but at the end I put down my 2 black tiles, all the ones in the middle turn black, so they become your color. It's like you surround them, and that's how the game's been around forever, literally.
Yeah, game's been around for a very long time, and the first video game version of it, to my knowledge, is this one that they've listed here in 1982 on DOS.
Yep.
We're going to jump 5 years down the road to 1987 in Japan on the Sega Master System. They got Enduro Racer. Don't know what that is. But in 1989, on the Famicom in Japan, they got a game called Baseball Stars. Now, I remember Baseball Stars on the NES.
Yeah.
Yep. It was a really cool game on the NES. We're going to jump a year later to 1990, which this was actually very surprising for me. On the Famicom in Japan, I don't know if this was the first version of the game or not, but Pac-Man was released in 1990 on the Famicom.
Really? So late?
Exactly. I would think it would have been released much earlier. Also on Genesis in Japan, they got a game called DJ Boy. I have no idea what that is,
I've
but
heard of that. Yeah.
I'm intrigued. 1992, on the a game called DOR2 was released in Japan on the PC-98 and the Sharp X68000.
Yes. The official video game system of the retro gamers, the Sharp 68 X68000. Go find one if you can.
Josh,
you got to. We didn't even hear about this system until we started doing this show. It's basically a home computer.
Yeah, I remember hearing about it. And...
It was,
when I retro spotlight on it, you should know everything.
Yeah. When I finally saw a picture of it, I was like, "That's it." It was so bulky and everything. Oh well.
Yep.
That's probably why I didn't do that well.
Exactly. Okay, so moving on, we're going to jump to 1994. On DOS again in the United States, we got a game called Alien Legacy on the 3.5-inch floppy drive.
Oh, nice.
And we also got an arcade version in Japan of Alien versus Predator.
Oh, sweet.
But that back in 94, I thought that was kind of early.
Yeah.
So when did the comic come out?
That film, before it actually saw, because it came out 2004, I want to say, it had been in development for so long.
Forever.
But that was the movie. Wasn't there a comic book way before that with the two of them crossing over?
Yes, they've done so.
They've done a lot of crossovers.
Yeah, Dark Horse owns the property to both of those, I believe.
Correct.
And 90s saw Superman versus Aliens and Predator versus Batman. So they've done
those.
Definitely a lot of different crossovers with those two properties, but the film had been in development for probably around the time that video game had actually come out, because you said 94, right?
Yeah, 1994.
Yeah, so I think 94, 93 was when they started actively putting it in development.
Okay, cool.
I still like to think the longest movie ever in development that eventually got made was Freddy vs. Jason, but that's my own personal preference.
I would agree with you there.
Yep. Moving on in 94, TurboGrafx CD in Japan was Wonder Boy in Monster World.
Oh, classic, yep. It's very obscure, but classic.
It's obscure, but it's a great game. 1995, Mortal Kombat 2 on the Sega 32X in Japan.
Okay.
And another game on TurboGrafx CD in Japan, which I brought up because, Larry, I'm sure you'll like it. It's called Wrestle Angels Double Impact.
Nice. Sounds exciting.
1996 on DOS, we got Warcraft 2, Beyond the Dark Portal.
Okay.
Precursors to the World of Warcraft, I would think.
Yeah, those games, the original Warcraft games, were really awesome.
Exactly. 1997 on the PlayStation, we got Rage Racer, Triple Play 98, and Wing Commander 4, The Price of Freedom.
Wing Commander. What was the baseball one?
Triple Play 98.
Yes, I remember
which came out in 97. Because if you know anything about those games, they always jump a year. Okay. 1998 on the PlayStation, Breath of Fire 3.
Ooh, good one.
And on the N64, Bust a Move Again.
So many versions of Bust a Move.
Too many. Way too many versions.
That's maybe been the first version I got, I think, was the one on N64.
I
don't think
the first one I got was Bust a Move 2 on PlayStation.
Yeah, because I didn't have a PlayStation until much later.
Oh, okay. Well, yeah, because that was at the time when you were still a Nintendo snob.
Well, or maybe I couldn't afford a PlayStation. I was in college.
No, we had many a discussion in our teen years on how it was Nintendo only and every other system should die.
No, nothing interested me on the PlayStation. What else happened this week in gaming?
Look, see, that was again a terrible attempt to segue. Josh, see,
no, that's
Larry,
just changing the topic.
See, Josh, we're not going to change the topic. See, back in the 90s, again, probably when you were just little bitty person, or not in existence, Larry and I became friends, and we used to have these very, very in-depth discussions about video game systems and how adamant he was about not liking anything outside of Nintendo. It did not matter what it was. It was Nintendo only. Nothing else existed.
Name brand loyalty. That's what it's called.
Yes, and I'm sure they've rewarded you with said loyalty.
I had gotten a free video game because I was a subscriber to Nintendo Power.
Oh, and for that,
And
that's a lifetime loyalty.
I would say so. Which one?
and because he is lifetime loyalty to Nintendo, he didn't have to call and ask to use the toothbrush.
That is, you know what? That is a very, very good point.
Did you get your Switch back?
I still marvel at the fact that they asked me to do that.
Did you get your Switch back yet?
I did get my Switch back on Thursday.
And do you still have your save game?
I have not turned it on yet because I'm afraid.
Oh boy! All righty.
When I do turn it on, if my game is not there, you will hear me from Los Angeles.
Well, currently, the game is like Schrodinger's cat. It's neither alive nor dead.
Very true.
That is exactly right. That I will have an answer later today. So just keep a window open today.
All right.
See if you hear me.
Sweet.
Moving on to 2000. On the Game Boy Color, Bomberman Max Blue Champion and Bomberman Max Red Challenger.
Okay.
So dual games. Vagrant Story for PlayStation, which was an excellent game.
Oh yeah, that's right. I forgot about that.
And then a game on Windows was released called Poker Girls Video Strip Poker.
Hey, I have to go pick that up.
Josh, I see the reaction. It's legendary.
I don't even remember it, so...
Yeah, I don't think it was very popular in Toys R Us.
Were you like 4?
No, I was born 91, bro.
Oh, okay.
Okay, I'm so sorry. So we'll exchange 4 for like 9. Big.
Yeah, somewhere around there. It's a 5-year difference that counts.
It's like, Mom, which strip poker?
And I'm taking away your system.
2001, Game Boy Color, 2 very excellent games. Legend of Zelda, Oracle of Ages, and Oracle of Seasons. Larry, I know you speak very highly of these 2.
Love those games. Those games Legend of Zelda: Link's Awakening for Game Boy was a great game, a great version of Zelda, but and then they came out with Link's Awakening DX for the Game Boy Color, which added an additional dungeon for the Game Boy Color. But Oracle of Seasons and Oracle of Ages were 2 completely separate games that linked to each other ultimately. So if you wanted to get the full story of that series, you had to play through one and then input a code to carry over all your stats and play through the other. And the mechanics of the time travel and the changing of the seasons and how it all worked on that Game Boy screen was fantastic. And thanks to modern day technology, I own Seasons, the original cart, and I was able to download Ages on the 3DS, and they'll still port over. So, of course, I'm in the process of still trying to beat Seasons, but
of course you
2
are.
great games. If you can download them on the 3DS, if you can. 2 phenomenal Zelda games.
I agree with all of that, except for the fact that Larry is still stuck on playing them. It falls into the Castlevania 2 category.
Yeah, I really don't complete too many games.
2001, staying in that year, Crazy Taxi for PlayStation 2.
Oh, okay.
Remember that one? Yes.
Yes, great. Look, acknowledgement. Josh heard of one. Because I hit the 21st century.
Triple Play 98 was cool.
Triple Play 98.
All right, good. You were relatively quiet until we got to the 21st century, so I was concerned.
Y2K silenced me.
Yes. 2002 on Xbox, we got Hunter the Reckoning, which I remember enjoying. Yeah. Spy Hunter on Game Boy Advance. Muppet Pinball Mayhem on Game Boy Advance.
Okay.
Never played.
No.
And jumping to 2003, Enter the Matrix on GameCube, Xbox, PS2.
I had it on GameCube, and
I had it on PS2, I think.
It was weird. I liked it in the beginning, but then I don't know. Then I just kind of fell out of it. It was weird.
That's because it was a Matrix movie or Matrix video game, and the Matrix movies started off really solid, and then they faded in quality.
It was nice of them to carry that experience over into a video game. Jumping over to 2004. On Windows, 2 games on PC. We got True Crime Streets of LA and No Action Jackson. I don't know if you remember that game.
I don't, but the name is awesome.
And on PS2 in Japan, they got Grand Theft Auto Vice City that year.
Ooh, good for them.
2005 on PlayStation 2 gets this is you know how I always pick a game that has a weird title,
Yep.
just for the sake of it. Okay, so this is the weird title of the week. Maybe that's its own little section that we had, a little segment. Weird title of the week. Thank you. PlayStation 2. Finny the Fish and the Seven Waters.
What game is it probably ripping off?
You know what? I'm not even going to ask.
It
Moving on.
vaguely sounds familiar.
Yes.
In all
And then
honesty.
we're gonna close out this week in gaming in 2006. We got the Da Vinci Code on Xbox and PS2, which was based off the film, and X-Men: The Official Game on GameCube, Xbox, PS2, and Game Boy Advance.
All right.
And that is this week in gaming.
There you have it. Sweet. All right, good stuff. Well, another week here down, and another week for retro gamers, but we're all not done. As this Friday, now we are going to head to the land of victims and villains with Josh, and we're going to get over there, start talking some stuff, and just follow us along, folks. Download the Retro Gamers, subscribe to us, download Victims and Villains, subscribe to them. And Josh, have any parting words from us before we see you on Friday?
Yeah, I would probably say the same thing we say anytime we do a crossover or a guest appearance on any show, is that if you guys have listened to this episode and you are currently masking pain or suicidal, depressed, whatever have you, addicted, let know that hope is real. It's not just a concept that a writer put into a movie or a director put into a video game. It's actually something that can be within your grasp. And if you guys are struggling with that, you guys can either hit us up on our Facebook, facebook.com/victimsandvillains, or go to victimsandvillains.net/contact. Or you guys can call anonymously to 1-800-273-8255, or you guys can also text 741-741 and get the help you guys can do. And our goal behind doing everything podcasting is we love doing stuff with Larry and Anthony, but the goal behind it and the heart behind it is really to see genuine breakthrough and have people walk away from suicide and depression, because it's too big of an issue right now. It just needs to be done with, and that's why we're here.
That's it. It's a
Well said.
wonderful mission that you're on, and good luck, definitely. And we're gonna see you shortly. And hey, real quick, I know it's a little bit of off topic, but it already happened over the weekend. Ant, how was the festival there for you?
Oh, the film festival went really, really well. We had a very positive response from the show based on the audience that showed up. We actually had a lot of the majority of the audience was actually Inside Guys supporters, which was really nice. So thank you to everybody who came out to see it. And hopefully just onward and upward from there.
Excellent, good stuff. And with me, you can also check me out on the Pro Slam World podcast, and there's actually going to be a wrestling show coming up in in New Jersey for Pro Wrestling Syndicate that I'll be talking about more as the weeks go on, and going to be incorporating some interviews as well. Going to get that part of it going, so check out the Pro Slam World podcast with Larry Mormon on iTunes. And with that, we're going to call it a week for the Retro Gamers. We're going to see you all Friday. Josh, we're going to see you Friday. And we're going to call it. So everyone have a good weekend. And happy belated Mother's Day to every mother out there. See you later.